Hi, I'm Thomas Hansen. I'm a filmmaker and content creator focused on adventures, outdoors and travels, and great stories. You can see my work on YouTube. The channel is called tshansen.
Hi, I'm Simon Josie, and welcome to the podcast. As this is the first episode, perhaps I can start off by giving you some background about it and how we got to this place. So I've been thinking about creating a podcast centered on motorcycling filmmakers for about 6 months. Not surprisingly, motorcycle filmmaking is an interest of mine. And back in the Northern Hemisphere winter of 2020-2021, I was a relatively new immigrant to Germany. I was stuck in my basement studying German, but I was also looking forward to buying a motorcycle in the coming spring. You know, as is typical these days, when any of us want to research something, I found myself trawling through YouTube, watching a large variety of motorcycling video content. And after a while, I noticed I was more drawn to some videos and not to others, and I was wondering, why was that? I started to think about this and wondered how the filmmakers created their content, what techniques they used, and the challenges they had to overcome. My interest only grew when I finally got my own bike and started dabbling in the area of motorcycle filmmaking too. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, when my initial thoughts about this podcast started to form. I work as an audio podcast technical producer, so I knew I could put together a podcast technically, but I'm usually the person behind the mixing desk, not behind the mic. So I thought I need a host or an interviewer. But, where am I going to find someone like that who has the same interest and an enthusiasm as me and totally on board with this fully non-commercial, passion-driven project? So I sat on this idea for months until I finally decided, well, perhaps I could host and just sort of get away with it by minimizing my voice. After all, the idea of the podcast is to hear the voices of the filmmakers, not me. And so here we are today. And before we get to the chat with my first guest, Thomas Hansen from Bergen, Norway, I want to do some expectation management. I fully intend to break one of the golden rules of podcasting, and that I won't be releasing episodes on a regular basis. As I mentioned, this is a passion project of mine, not a commercial undertaking, and thus I have to work on it in my spare time. And it takes quite a bit of work to find and communicate with the guests, to undertake the necessary research, record the interviews, and then produce and package up each episode. If this is something that you can live with, well, then I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast, either in your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, where I will also be posting episodes. New episodes will automatically appear in your feed when they're released. Okay, so now let's get on to my talk with Thomas. Hi, Thomas. Welcome and thanks for joining me on this episode of the Real Riders podcast. You've been posting videos on your YouTube channel since 2013. You currently have over 150 videos posted, plus a handful of YouTube shorts. As well as travel videos, you also make videos covering motorcycle gear reviews, camping gear reviews, and how-to videos, mainly focus on video post-production techniques. I'd like to start off by asking about your origins in motorcycle filmmaking. What came first, an interest in motorcycling or an interest in video or filmmaking?
That's a really good question, to be honest. I think I started out with photography when I was back in starting out at school. We had a dark room. We were developing films and taking pictures. I think that's where it started. And when I was 20 or 21 years old, I could take the license for motorcycling. And then I soonly discovered that I was kind of like a traveler. I really enjoyed getting around with ease, exploring new places, towns, roads, and whatnot. And really nice nature and mountains and rivers and all that kind of stuff has always captivated me, in a sense that I always wanted to take a picture or share it in a way. So it started out with probably first photography, then motorcycling, and then I started to do blogs or write-ups or travel stories with pictures and words. And from there on out, I got a friend who saw that I had a creative mind and asked me if he bought me a camera, would I try to do it on YouTube as well? And I was just laughing at the idea and said, yeah, sure, give me a camera, I'll do it. And a couple of days later, he was at my doorstep with a camera. So I kind of had to do something about that.
And so it sounds to me like you're largely self-taught. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Everything I've done has kind of been self-taught.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about your motorcycles a little bit that you've made the videos with. Like I've seen that you've had a number of different motorcycles, but when you're choosing a motorcycle, what are you actually looking for when it comes to supporting your content creation?
Oh, all my bikes up until now, I think, has just been about me trying to find the perfect bike. And everybody could probably agree that there is no perfect bike. It's always kind of a dynamic thing that evolves compared to what your needs are in a certain time. So I started out with a heavy adventure bike, and then I slowly went the path down to a lighter and more agile adventure bike who I could bring onto the gravel roads and have fun on trails and stuff like that. And I always had in mind that I needed to bring my equipment because I've always been a hiker and I loved camping. So I wanted to bring that part of my life with me when I was out on a motorcycle and doing my kind of things. And I think I never actually been choose my bike out from my content. I always choose my bike first and then I make content around that. It doesn't matter what bike I have. That's not the reason I do it, if that makes sense.
Sure. And do you find, you mentioned favoring lighter bikes for real off-roading. Does that place limitations on the amount of gear, particularly the amount of video making gear or film shooting gear that you can take with you?
Yeah, in some regards. It made it harder to bring with you a little bit of extra luxury items, but I mainly use 3 cameras. I have the action camera on my face to do point of views filming, and then I have a Sony that I bring with me to put on the tripod and do all the B-rolls, and then I have a drone. And all that could fit into a tank bag really easy. So it doesn't matter too much on the size of the bike in that regard, but riding on longer adventures with a smaller adventure bike has been quite painful because of the comfort, the lack of fuel range, and a lot of other stuff. So I went down to a KTM 690, and that was a little bit hard on body and whatnot. So I went up to the KTM 790, and that was kind of the jack of all trades. It's still a little bit heavy, but it's perfect in between a big adventure bike and a lighter adventure bike. And of course, proper off-road and really technical stuff is not allowed in Norway or in Scandinavia in general. So there's not that much you need a really light adventure bike for.
Right. In terms of filmmaking technology, what developments that we've seen have actually been critical in enabling you to make the videos and the films that you make? And by this, I'm being quite wide-ranging in my question because I'm thinking, we have these days very compact and rugged high-resolution cameras. We have drones. We have computer-based non-linear editing. I know it's been there for a long time, but compared to what people did 50 years ago in trying to make these types of films, it's really difficult. But also the fact that we have YouTube, which we can post to and distribute our content without having to go through third parties. So coming back to the question, what do you think has made the biggest difference to you and what you're able to do?
I do think that the stabilization, the modern stabilization, and possibility to connect easy good audio to my cameras, like a external shotgun mic and actually a drone, I would say, because that is kind of like a cheat code because you have so much to get that bird perspective in when you are riding into scenic places or beautiful fjords or high mountains. You kind of put that little bit extra spice on the footage. You sell more of a dream, more than just having a good camera, technical camera. But again, like you said, we have all those compact cameras, and many people would say that it doesn't matter what camera you choose. And I would argue against that because it has all to do with what gear you use. But You really need to learn the gear before you understand what gear you need and then upgrade. But that's a long discussion. But kind of audio and the stabilization, because when I started out the first time, it was back in 2013. Then there was those old GoPros into the kind of boxes you had to close, and the audio was terrible. It was shaky. It was absolutely horrible to watch. And when the new stabilization came to the GoPros, it just revolutionized the motorcycle footage. Everything was so smooth and so much easier to watch. And of course, you were able to get better audio.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of the last question in this sort of technology area, what's the next piece of kit that you plan to buy? What's missing from your gear locker at the moment?
Oh, that is also a hard question. Most would probably argue that I have way too much equipment already, but I do think that I want to upgrade my drone. I have a license to fly a drone. It's quite strictly regulated here in the EU, but I really want to upgrade to the newest Mavic Air 3, I think, because that has waypoints, so I can put in a certain path of where I want the drone to fly, and then I can kind of set it up, rig it, and just make it fly, and then I can ride more technical stuff without being so focused on controlling the drone as well. So I do think a new drone would be the first thing I would invest in.
Moving into a slightly different area now. So what's impressed me, I have to be honest and say I haven't watched all the videos that you've made, but I think I've watched a good sample of the films that you've put up. And one thing that really interests me is your evolution as a filmmaker.
Thank you.
You know, it's obvious to me that you've learned a lot over the years, particularly when it comes to building story. If we look back, you mentioned you made your first video in 2013, and then I think there was a bit of a gap, and then you appeared again in something like 2019 or something. And even then, it seemed that you'd already made a big jump in your ambition, should we say.
Yeah.
In December 2021, you posted a video to YouTube titled 7 Steps to Make Better Motorcycle Videos on YouTube. In that video, you told viewers that before you capture any footage, you sit down and plan out a video, starting with a list of keywords and building a story from that list. I want to ask, is that applicable for every type of video you make? You know, your travel videos, your gear reviews, your how-to videos. Is that your approach for everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that one of the most underrated parts of making a good video online these days are to build a story or a story around it. Some of my travel videos are based in the same principle, but because you are on a trip, you're trying to capture some of the moments that happen when you are on the trip. But every day is a story. You have beginning, the morning, you have something happening in the middle of the day, and you have the end, which is when you come to camp at the night, rigging up and setting everything. And that is kind of like the golden rule for every day I'm on a trip. I try to have morning, midday, and evening. And then I try to fill in between. And of course, you try to build a story. And every time I'm riding down a long road before a new curve, it's kind of like I try to see what I can plan for this day or next day. So every time I'm riding and I'm getting a little bit bored, I try to plan ahead the next step in that video. Yeah.
One thing I noticed, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but even in those early ones, and I'm thinking of the Sweden TET videos, the Trans-Euro Trail, which was perhaps not quite the very first ambitious series of travel videos you've made, but close to the beginning. Even then, I got the feeling that you were starting to build these stories, even if you had some limitations, and you mentioned some of the limitations, or I've seen you write about them, which is that you said, I was traveling with a group for some of the time, and not everyone wants to stop every 15 minutes while I set up the camera and rewrite over this little bit that I've just, want to get a shot of. But I still felt at the very beginning you were like, I caught this nice bit of trip. I need to include this. I need to include a little bit of all these bits of the day. But then as this time has gone on, you've thought, no, what actually has to drive the video is the story. And yeah, sure, that bit of the road was a nice bit of video and the timing was nice and the sound, whatever, but I'm going to leave it out because it's not actually contributing to the story. Do you feel yourself that you've progressed and developed, evolved in that way in terms of your storytelling?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Everything comes down to practice. The more you practice, the more you do it, the more you kind of get accustomed to the thought process of how to build a story. And I feel like I'm getting better at storytelling as I develop my editing skills, because I do understand more what to shoot, what to look for, when to ride and leave out stuff, what is important, what can kind of captivate you as a viewer. And I always try to make it relatable. If you ride down the same road that I have ridden, you can see some of the highlights I have focused on. So you can recognize, going down the same path, you will recognize a lot of the shots I made in the video. And I think that is important as well. So it feels more connected to the viewer. And of course, I'm trying to build, sometimes you kind of build a little bit around a story, making a great story is never completely true. And the same goes in video. A really good story is not completely true. So you kind of make a couple of twists just to get the audience to relate more in a way. Sometimes you have to encourage for a little bit of overreacting, and sometimes you can take away stuff because, yeah. And of course, in the beginning, I shot everything. I thought everything was important. My camera was going all day long, and I had so much footage. And I think one of the most important part is to understand what you can throw away and what you need. And that kind of develops and you get better.
So when you first started, filming, did you have any awareness or any idea that actually the editing was going to be so important?
No, not in that regard. I had a little bit of idea because I have been doing photography and editing in that regard, and I did understand how important lighting, background, foreground, composition, and all that was, and how easy you could lead the audience into looking at a certain part of the picture. But then I only had one frame to kind of capture your attention. Now you have 25 frames each second. So it's kind of, you can say, yeah, I had a little bit of idea, but still the importance of being a good editor is way, way, way more important than people think. And I think that makes the difference between the guys who really does it and the people that just jump off the train because it's so much work.
Yeah, absolutely. Becoming an editor, what has that specifically taught you as someone shooting footage?
It have taught me a lot about showing what you're talking about, or it's kind of like, if I want you to be part of a certain aspect, like me putting in a GPX file to my GPS unit, it's kind of like you have to show that in a couple of different angles. You need to suck them in. And the same is if I want to set up my tent, I need to build up with different angles so people can understand and relate to the work without boring them. So you're kind of putting down the tent pegs, putting in the poles, just like a fraction of a second, you just get those glimpses, and then you kind of let the audience build a story on their own, just with a couple of seconds of footage, instead of showing 10 minutes that it takes to put up a tent. So it kind of learned me to be much more mystical with the footage I use, to not overtell. Oversharing is kind of not good in video. You need to kind of keep a little bit of mystery so you can make a little bit of the story yourself.
Yeah, I think one thing I can cite back to you an example which I thought was or a couple of examples. The first one was, I think on one of your early camping trips, you did this, but you did it in a slightly crude way, which was that you took video of you making a cup of coffee and you took it from different angles and different steps, but you sort of almost felt like you had to put video of all the steps. But now when you do it, you actually can do what maybe takes a minute. You'll do it in 5 seconds and you'll convey the message to the viewers, hey, I just made a cup of coffee, but you don't have to watch me do every single step.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're consciously aware of, that you've moved to that sort of level of sophistication?
Yeah, a little bit is kind of in the back of my head. Just I'm not thinking about it because it's been kind of like when you develop the skill, you kind of do it without thinking too much about it. But I do think it's much more intentional than I think of myself, because I always trying to like not tell too much. It's really easy to, okay, I want to make a cup of coffee, so I need to make every step. So kind of giving the impression of the viewer is a little bit dumb, but you really need to make the viewer think that they are really smart in a way.
Yeah.
So when you kind of show just a couple, instead of showing 10 angles, you only show 3 angles and make a little bit of that you made the story with my footage in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit hard to explain.
No. Well, at least I understand. The other example I was going to cite, which was a little bit humorous, and again, it's from a very recent video that you've posted. In Norway, you're coming down a road, and the way the camera is set up, in the foreground is a locked gate, and then you're coming down towards the locked gate,
towards it,
and suddenly it's setting up this question in the viewer's mind. Oh, what's going to happen here? And you cut a few other shots. I think one of the locked gate, and so you build up the story, and then at the end you sort of have a bit of a piece to camera where you explain that it's actually private land, and I wish I'd like to go on this land, but I can't. But just there was a bit of humor in the timing and building up the mystery of what's going on here. And again, I thought that was a very nice piece of storytelling. Visually, again, it was suggestive. It didn't spell everything out. It was just, it was very nicely done. I thought it was, and was that what you were deliberately looking to try and do with that sequence?
Yeah, I was having that in my mind, that I know that there's I get a lot of questions from my viewers from recent videos, and those kind of pile up in a way, and I keep them memorized in my head. So when I'm out traveling and I come across places I know where I can include questions I get often, I try to kind of build something around it. And sometimes it's kind of funny because sometimes I do it without being aware of it myself. So when I'm back editing, I find footage that, I can build a story of this. This kind of like, I didn't remember that I had a really good plan for it, but when I see the footage afterwards, I see that, there's a complete story here. So maybe it's because of my level of expertise or my kind of been training for this so long now. It kind of, when I see a moment, I grab it without actually recognizing it completely. So it kind of requires me a little bit of thought to. I can't really tell you if I do it deliberately, or it's kind of like when you are a photographer, you look for that one composition, that one fraction of a second for lighting and whatnot, and it's really hard to explain. But when you see it, you see it, and I feel like that is like with it in videography as well, because I really need to go around and see, is this a good composition? No, it's not. I need to move around to another place, and so yeah.
And that's what I find always so fascinating about video making, is that when you progress from just sticking the camera on the front of your helmet and driving along down a road to going, well, actually, that's a little boring. How do I tell a story that's not boring in that way? What do I do? And so, again, one thing that you seem to pick up quite early was this need to capture the variety of shots. I imagine that takes a lot of time and effort. So what do you do to try and make that as efficient as possible? Like, what are your tricks of the trade for how you make that process efficient?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Let me see. Just the beginning of the question. One of the things that led me to going from a point of view camera towards setting up all the different angles was that I'm really self-critical. I always go back and watch my content over and over again and try to learn from my own mistakes and trying to make that better in my next production. I have a rule for myself. I always need to make something better for the next video every time. And when I was going through YouTube, there was so much, in my opinion, rubbish that was put out just for the fun, for the sake of it. And I thought that I want to do this in this niche. I really need to stand out in a way. I'm kind of like the small fish in the big pond, so I really need to do something that others don't. And how can I do that? How can I achieve to be different? I can put in extra effort. I can do that little bit extra that others don't. And I think I have done something there that people can relate to and really appreciate. And when it comes to being effective, it comes to building up a great system for, I work as a firefighter, so everything on the engine is quite structured and where you put things, and everything has its certain place. And the same is with my setup. When my bike is neatly packed in a certain way, so I know where my camera is, I know how easy it is to take up, point and shoot and get the great footage, and I have my tripod right behind my back, so it's easy to go off the bike, take it out, set it up, go back and forth, go back, put it down again, and then get going. So it's kind of like you really learn a working habit that is efficient, and then it's become like your second nature. I don't recognize how many times I put up the tripod. It's just a part of the trip for me, in a way.
Do you have any funny stories about this? Because, I'm here in Germany, and Germany's quite large, but even in the middle of nowhere, suddenly there's a German appears out of nowhere. I'm just wondering, do you encounter problems with setting up your camera on the tripod? Do you drive off down the road and then come back and then suddenly find some member of the public is looking at your camera or playing with it, or?
No, it's been quite, to be honest, there's not been many issues with that. And I always seen my camera as a tool to do a job. I don't see it as a high valuable thing. I have insurance on it, and if somebody nicks it or somebody tips it over or it gets broken, I get a new one. It's kind of like if you are afraid to use your tools, you will not manage to capture footage like I do or some other people do. But the only thing, I have one time I actually got a person that picked up my camera, and that was just because he thought I forgot it, and he ran after me trying to, hey, you forgot your camera. So it was like, no, I had to go back and explain to him that it was intentional. I was trying to film that I was going away from a lunch spot I had picked out. So, and he was, oh yeah, sorry. And we had a good laugh and a good story about it. So yeah, but that has only happened once or twice, I think.
And you've actually been quite ambitious, because it's one thing to sort of hide your camera in the forest in the middle of nowhere. But, I've seen you must have put the camera like in the middle of a town or something and driven into the town. Or even, quite impressively, I think you've done some B-roll inside the supermarket when you've been shopping. So obviously the supermarket's been cooperative, or you've been so sneaky about it that they haven't seen you do that?
A couple of times it's sneaky, but in Norway, as a general rule, you kind of ask before you, or you have to put out the faces so you can't recognize them. But when you are in a public space, you should expect that you can get filmed. So there's some tricky rules around that. But normally I go into the shop and I find, okay, here is something I can make out of it. And then I try to just ask the owner of the store or the people in the register to say if it is okay that I take a couple of video shots in your store. Here in Norway, that's normally no problem at all. And I find that the more, the more obvious you do it, the more people let it be. Because if you try to put it in a sneaky place, you get everybody's attention and everybody starts staring into the lens, and then you ruin the shots. So I try to just be quite obvious with it.
One thing that we see on YouTube is a lot of bikers have MultiCam setups in terms of the action cam. So they have maybe a helmet mounted or chest mounted, and then they'll have maybe one or two other cameras mounted on the bike. That's not something that you appear to have done. Occasionally, I think you hold your camera out on the left-hand side as you're driving along. But that seems to have been a deliberate decision on your part. Is that right?
Yeah, that is quite deliberate, because I find 360 cams and all that stuff, I call them personally lazy cams. It comes down to people are using kind of just trying to change the perspective a little bit, and they just can use the same footage. And for me, I feel like, have you ever gone to the cinema or you ever gone to watch a movie where you see a 360 camera being used and they just reframing it? For me, making a story, for me, taking pictures, for me, doing everything is more like capture that moment for you to be part of it. If you the 360 cameras can be genius for what it is, but it's so easy to overuse, and I feel like everybody's doing it, so it's not special anymore. So I feel like you're not doing yourself any favors, and I think it gives a little bit of lack of quality in the overall production if you use that. In my view, I do understand people have done it with great success, and I've completely give people credit for that, but I don't find it interesting to use. I find if it's easy to get lazy if you're getting down that path.
Yeah. So drone footage is something that has become, I mean, it's everywhere now, and it seems to have gone hand in hand with the development of motorcycle filmmaking or video making and what we see on YouTube. When did you first start using a drone?
I think when the first Mavic Mini came out, I started playing around with drones because it was so small. You could get around some certain rules, and of course it was really tiny and easy to bring with you. And but the reception of the controller, you lost signal. It was really poor when it was a little bit windy outside. So here in Norwegian condition, with all the winds going down the mountains and stuff, that was just terrible to use. So, but I quickly understand that to be different, to stand out in the crowd, you need to have you need an advantage. You need something that others don't. And I feel like here in Norway, with the exceptional mountains and nature, having a drone, it's kind of like a cheat code.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, really, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
So in terms of drone footage, what practical issues do you encounter when creating drone footage, particularly in the places that you like to ride, i.e. mainly in Norway?
There's a lot of strict rules when it comes to national parks in Norway. As long as you don't fly over traffic, it's allowed, but you cannot get too far away from the main road. So if you start flying out to the left or the right, whatnot, you kind of breaking the rules. And it's a little bit like the speed limit. Everybody knows that going over the speed limit is illegal, but most of people go 10 or 20 above anyway. And I find it's like that when it comes to drone footage as well. A lot of people taking unnecessary chances in some regards, but I try to keep it, because I put it out on YouTube. It's so easy to incriminate yourself. So I really try to be strict to staying with the rules. And of course, some places I've done all the research, I thought it was allowed. And later I saw, it wasn't allowed after all. So then I just trash the footage. I just delete it. I don't put it out online. And in some places, I have a subscription stuff online. You can get like stock footage. And there's a lot of drone footage for Norway. So some of the footage I can download for free there, and then it's not on me.
Right. I noticed that you have started doing some tracking while you're riding the bike while using the drone.
No, I don't use tracking at all because it's so dodgy. It always go where you don't supposed to. So I have the controller on my handlebar, and I ride with my right hand, and I fly the drone with my left hand. So I kind of fly the drone with just one finger.
Oh, so you're actually physically controlling it. You're not
flying
using
myself, yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
And in the rules, it says you should always have a visual of the drone at all times. But I always fly like that over areas I know there is not people I can dive down and hurt. I always are really careful where I choose to fly the drone like that.
Yeah.
And it's a part of it. It's kind of like I have many hours of PlayStation from my youth. So it's kind of second nature to fly the drone on a controller like that for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've also seen the many videos from these guys out in the rural areas of the United States flying, and they clearly are using tracking. But, these guys in the middle of nowhere, I don't think in Europe it's so easy to do that kind of video footage.
No.
Yeah.
But of course, the new tracking system, the new tracking algorithms or whatnot, and especially the Skydio drone from America, is kind of like the Tesla of drones. the tracking there is unbelievable. But on my personal drone, the tracking is a little bit insufficient. It's not that good. So, but if I upgrade my drone now, the tracking is much better. So I would probably use it more.
Sure. Based on what you've currently published to YouTube, many of the travel-based episodes are less than 15 minutes, and quite a few of them are less than 10 minutes. Your gear reviews and your how I do it kind of videos, they typically are less than 15 minutes, and also many of them are less than 10 minutes. What are the factors driving your decisions about video episode length?
Oh, I don't have a specific number on that in that regard. I'm trying to keep it under 15 minutes if I can, but I let the content choose how long it should be. If I don't want to bore people, I don't want to take up more of your time than actually I can kind of interest you. And just to make a long video just for the sake of it, that has never been my deal. It's all about having a story or a product or whatnot to show and kind of try to make clear all the answers around that. If that takes 7 minutes or 15 minutes, it doesn't matter. I choose to do it anyway. And I see that compared to the algorithms and YouTube and people telling you should stick between those and those numbers for the best retention view and all that, that is probably fine if you want to make a living out of it and you really want to specialize in becoming as good as you can in the business part of this. But for me, it's never been about money. It's never been about trying to make a successful business out of it. It's just me creating and exploring my passion and having the opportunity to put that out there and get the reviews and get the people enjoying it. So for me, it's not about time. It's more about content, to be honest.
Your content is predominantly based in Norway, and I guess that's no surprise.
I get a lot of questions about that.
But in terms of your storytelling, does it actually help, do you think, that you are Norwegian? In other words, do you think you have an advantage over other video filmmakers who might be coming to make similar type of videos in Norway? Is it your cultural understanding, not just your understanding and knowledge of the geography, et cetera, of the country, but maybe your cultural understanding as well of what people will tolerate? We touched on this a little bit where you talked about how you've done some B-roll and, how your approach to it. Is the fact that you're Norwegian, is that a distinct advantage for you, do you think, in your ability to make really good videos?
That's actually quite a good question, and I haven't been thinking too much about that, to be honest. I do think it's like a football team playing at home. You always have that advantage, and I do think it's like that for me as well, because I live in Norway. You know the culture, you know the geography, and what comes over that valley. You know where to go to get a better footage for this or that, or where the sun goes up and goes down. You have a little bit of better understanding of the orientation and what to look for, and of course the seasons, how high the sun is on the sky compared to when to get the best lighting. But I would not say that I have too much of an advantage. If you really know what you're doing, if it doesn't matter where you're from. There's a lot of really great, talented YouTubers or filmmakers coming from other countries to Norway and make brilliant content. But of course, one of the reasons I have been so much in Norway is that I have a family life and I have work, and I thought when I started this journey that I would be traveling the world and living the dream and whatnot. But I see that my commitments to my family and my work is taking up a little bit of my time. So I'm trying to make the best of it. My dream is to get more into Europe and maybe over to America, down to the South America. I have a lot of things on my bucket list. But life is such a dynamic thing. You really just need to wing it and make the best of it. And of course, being in Norway, you have so much great nature. I can really make good travel videos in Norway, but I would prefer to be traveling more into Europe or other countries as well.
Yeah, I won't take a cheap shot at the flat, boring land of Sweden, which is just so close to you.
That is really hard to make good videos in Sweden. Jesus Christ. You will see that in my next travel videos. Jesus.
Yeah.
And you can include it. I have no shame. I have 2 friends from Sweden and I know about it. It's just every time they see my videos, it's just like, damn, Norway. It's a cheat code.
Yeah. You've also said that finding the right music for your videos is possibly one of the hardest aspects. Why is that? And what stage of the production process do you select the music? Is it before or after you've captured the video footage?
Oh, that depends actually. Sometimes if I'm in a good mood, or if I'm writing a script, or I'm writing down ideas for upcoming videos, that list is starting to get long. I listen to music in the background, and every time I catch a good song, I save it for and maybe into projects or whatnot, or I just download it to have for later references. But music is so dependent on mood, where you are in life. If it's in the morning or if it's in the evening, and if you are sad or happy. And after I started this video production stuff, I really started to listen more to music. Before I was hearing music, now I'm listening to music, because I really need to find music that play with the emotion of the viewer when they see the certain views or the certain footage that I put out. And I get so many questions of, wow, why do I bring in music to the videos? You should just have motorcycle engine noise and wind noise and that stuff. And people are missing the point. I do understand that some people really prefer that, and I can be fine with that. But for me and my production, I have a hard time not including music, because music speaks to your soul. And if you can complement that with great footage, it will make a bigger impact on you. And of course, when do I pick the music? Sometimes I have a lot of footage that are sitting on my computer. I kind of have the story, and it takes me days to just get that one song to get going. It's just crazy. Sometimes it can be really horrible. And then everything is just going off. It's like, yeah.
And in the audio space as well, how important is it for you to capture accurate sound? And, there's a lot of obsession on the internet with capturing the correct tone of the motorcycle, et cetera, et cetera. What do you do? What do you do practically to address any challenges, and what's sort of been your most successful approach to capturing accurate sound?
I did try to take a microphone into like this the audio recorder, Zoom H1 or N or what it's called. And I had a couple of really professional audio stuff that I put in my backpack, and I tried to ride around, and I tried to use my horn on the bike to kind of know where to clip and not. But the process and the value of what I got back was so little, and compared to how much work I put into it, and it just took away so much fun of riding. It just became too much work. If I should shoot a commercial for a really successful business or whatnot, I would put much more time into audio. But most of the audio I record is from the microphone on the camera, not built in, but the shotgun mic. I have a Sennheiser shotgun mic on my Sony, and every time I pass or ride through back or forth from my camera, that is the sound of the actual bike from that mic. And I try to adjust it in the post-processing. I try to sweeten it out a little bit, but when I ride with the point of view, you really need to have engine sound there to kind of feel that you are there in a way. You kind of need to make it honest, or yeah. So I find that I just, if it's getting too much wind noise and that stuff, I just try to mute it down to a level where it doesn't get distracting, and I put on a little bit music, and I try to mix that in a good way so it doesn't become too obnoxious to listen to, because a bad audio experience ruins everything. And of course, I play a lot with sound effects, building up a sound board around my videos as well. That is something I do, because drone doesn't have any sound.
Exactly. This may be just completely natural to you, but to me, whether conscious or not, you've made a decision to employ your voice, or either using this voiceover, or sometimes speaking directly to camera. And arguably you don't need to do that. It's a decision that you've made to do. So what's driving you to do that, either the voiceover or the speaking to camera?
I'm trying to make it real. I'm trying to get people to know me or have a character to build a relationship to. Because in the beginning, I didn't do it because I had a really hard time talking to camera. I had a really hard time listening to myself talking English, and I stumbled across words. I was trying to be perfect, and every time I had to redo it, and it just became such a pain in the ass. But then I started to understand that there's a lot of people out there who share their stories. They're sending me emails, they're sending me handwritten letters from that they can relate to me as a person and what I do and my interest. And then I started to see the power and impact of being unique. You and me can do the exact same thing, same footage, same audio, but my voice is different from you. That makes us unique as person. And most people need somebody they can relate to, not only beautiful footage. So that is something I will probably do a little bit more of in the future as well. I will try to become more of a character in my own video, but without being a vlogger that go talking around to the camera all the time.
Yeah, I think there are ways to do it. I quite like the sequence you did when you put your back out and you were in the middle of a trip, and you could have hidden that from everyone, but actually decided to talk about it a little bit. And I don't think that hurts, because like you say, people go, oh yeah, it makes you. It makes the video personal, relatable. It gives a bit of story to it as well.
Yeah, and because I'm trying to make such high quality content as well, I really need to show the audience that there's not only sunshines and rainbows. There's a lot of hard times on the road, and I'm working as a firefighter. I'm really into mental health as well. I really think that is an important part of everyone's life, and we really need to be much more involved in all the mental issues that can go on. And I think that being on the road, it's such a therapy session. And it clears your head, but still the emotion gets it. You get homesick, you miss your parents, or you miss your kids, or you miss whatnot. And I do think that the more honest and genuine you can be about that and show it off without it being too much to kind of people getting to feel sorry for you. But you need to include it to be more real, or to be more authentic is the right word, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I know we're not the first people to talk about it, but it's something that's come to me quite late in life, this connection between mental health and motorcycling, and just how many people out there say, wow, everyone's heard the joke about you'll never see a motorcycle parked outside a psychologist's or a therapist's office. That's been pushed back a little bit, and fair enough too. But yeah, in my own life, I've also discovered that there's a massive connection for me between these two things. Yeah, it's a whole other series of podcasts that maybe I might have to think about doing.
Yeah.
But it's a really, really interesting topic. Just a few more questions about production, post-production. Roughly, how long does it take to create each video, considering all the steps of production, pre-production, planning, shooting footage, editing, post-production? And let's talk about the travel videos rather than the other ones.
Oh, it takes ages. It can take ages. It's just like there's no golden rule. There's no. Sometimes everything just clicks and go by itself. You get into a rhythm, you get into creative flow, and everything just all the stars aligns, a perfect world. And sometimes it's just you need to go back, you scratch everything, you go back, rebuild it, you scratch everything and go over again. So it can take days, it can take weeks, it can even take months, but in most cases, it takes a couple of weeks in general to build a story, write down everything, find the correct music, sound effects, and build it into a 10 to 15 minutes video. And
of that total process, which part do you enjoy the most, and which part do you enjoy the least?
I just. That is actually a really, really good question, because I don't think I dislike any of it. I think that shows. I think that many people have asked me throughout the years, what's my biggest passion? And I've always said motorcycling has been my biggest passion. But I do think that that's incorrect. I do think being a creator, sharing my adventure is even a bigger passion for me than motorcycling alone. So just being part of creating something, capture something, put it all together and show it off as a story for you to enjoy is just incredible. It's just really incredible for me.
Do you think that the whole production process that occurs after the footage is gathered, it sort of, does it like extend the pleasure of the ride? Because I don't know if you...
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
So like when I go on holiday, one of the things I love to do is to come back and just download all my photos and save them somewhere, and just to go through them again and look at them and maybe use them for something later on. And I feel that extends my pleasure of the holiday. It's like, it wasn't just that 2 weeks I was away or whatever, it was like all that post-processing that I do later.
Yeah, for me it's like that as well. It's like you reliving the story, and you are able to kind of create your own. I was there enjoying the part of my vacation or my trip, but now I can revisit the trip again, remember everything, all the small details, and now I can put it all together and create an even better story than I experienced myself in a way. So it's quite unique. It truly is.
Of the process, honestly speaking, what would you say is the part that you struggle most with of that whole total production? And which part are you most self-critical of? Which part are you always, is there any particular aspect that you're always looking to improve?
Yeah, storytelling. Making a script. I really struggle. I can talk with you now with emotions. I can really go up and down with my voice. Everything sounds really natural. But as soon as I write something down and I start to read from the screen, it just gets really weird and awkward. And that is one thing I'm really struggling to be better at. So I started to listen to English podcast or shows on my radio, and I try to pause it and I say it out loud to myself in the car just to practice English better and becoming better. When I'm riding my motorcycle, I try to think in English as well. Every word I'm thinking is in English. So just to kind of become better at this thing, because the storytelling is so important. And that is the one thing I struggle most with, because it's like being and I actually, funny thing is that lately I talked with a friend of mine here in Norway, and we've agreed on next year I will try to write and read much more to become better at creating visual storytelling.
Okay.
To see if that can make it spin further.
Just a few questions about your experience with YouTube. Based on your feedback from YouTube viewers, what have you discovered works and what doesn't work?
Oh, that is actually a good question as well, because I really get a lot of positive feedback. I feel like a lot of people, if people are criticizing my work, they don't tell me in a way. So a lot of the feedback I get is really positive, and I always I have a saying on my wall that is one for you and one for me. So all my videos I try to make one for what the audience expect for me, and one video is for me to kind of develop my creative skill. Or so you can see some of my videos doesn't quite align when it comes to not only motorcycle. I have something from my cabin, I have something from other part of my life that I quite enjoy. So I always try to do a slight variation of everything, because I really want to develop my video and storytelling. So, yeah.
One thing I've noticed is that you're a hard-working YouTuber. You're a diligent YouTuber. You're very conscientious about engaging with your subscribers. People make comments, and you always sort of make some sort of comment back to them. How much time? That must be a lot of work. How much time does that take? Is it a lot of work?
No, well, it's obviously, if I would rate it down in hours, but I think it's my goddamn obligation to doing this, because when people are taking their time, their free time to watch my content and giving me feedback on that, I think it's a common courtesy for me to give something back or just acknowledge that thank you for the comment. I appreciate it. I will see what I can do. I think it's if it's part of me being a Norwegian or just me being a humble guy, I'm not sure. I just feel like that is common courtesy for me, at least. I know that there will probably be a point where I had to stop doing that because it takes too much time. But I try to, every morning I wake up, I take a 15 minutes or half an hour, and I just try to write a comment. And every time I have free time or I procrastinate, instead of taking push-ups on the floor to punish myself for being lazy, I sit down and I answer a couple of comments, and then I go back to work again. So it's kind of, it's in between everything else I do. So I try to be really conscious about that, giving back to everybody.
Okay, just some final thoughts, Thomas.
Yeah.
Does video or filmmaking get in the way of a decent ride?
For many, yes. For me, absolutely not. For me, I would not enjoy a motorcycle trip as much without my camera as I would with my camera. So I can understand for somebody it is become a hassle or a work or something they need to do. But for me, it's not something I need to do. It's something I enjoy to do. And motorcycling is the tool to get me out there making more content. But I don't need to make content. As you can see on my videos, I don't put out one every week. I put out a video when it's ready or I have something for the audience. And many times I have been on trips. I have filmed trips and enjoyed it, but it never come to YouTube. But I have it stored as a B-roll or things I could look back on later. So for me, it's not a hassle at all. For me, I relive a lot of the trips that I have done many times before, but doing it with the camera makes it much more interesting.
And who in the video or filmmaking space do you particularly admire, and who do you take inspiration from? And if there's anyone out there, are they only in the motorcycle filmmaking genre, or are there other genres that you like to take inspiration from as well?
I look to people that give me inspiration. It came everything from playing a piano, from creating woodwork in the basement, and of course you have a couple of guys who are really good in YouTube space when it comes to motorcycling, like Adam Ryman in Australia. You have a guy called Brett Peterson. He's quite a small channel, but he has been working in television or whatnot. He's really good in storytelling. And you have my two friends in Sweden, Matthias and Robert. They have been really good inspirational source for me. And there are actually quite a lot of people who inspire me. And Greg Villalobos in England, he was one of the guys who made me start out this whole journey as well. He was one of the first really great motorcycle travel videographer people. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of people, and it doesn't mean that you have to be popular or have a lot of followers to inspire me. It's just like you have something unique, you have an eye for a certain detail, or you do something with passion that inspire me a lot.
So, Thomas, thanks for being my guest on this episode of the Real Riders podcast. Other than your YouTube channel, is there anywhere else people can find you online?
No, deleted everything. It took too much time, so I just focus on YouTube because, there's so many people want to interact with me, tell me stories, share the stuff, and I feel obligated to answer everyone, so it just took up too much time for me to interact with too many social media platforms, and it kind of messed up my head a little bit. I want to focus on the creative part, not being one of the many influencers or what you want to call it. So and I just want to say thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I always find it interesting to talk with new people and meet new people, and
Great. Super. Thanks very much. That's it for this episode. I look forward to watching more of your work as you post it to YouTube. Cheers. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.